PR Connections Radio presents.
Hey, how are you? We're back. Got another great show for you, okay? It's not your fault or mine, but together we're going to do something about it. Stay tuned. Voices of humanity, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices. Hi there, Sandra McKechnie here, coming to you from prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. I am your host, Sandra McKechnie. This is my lovely guest. This is Lorrie Simunovic. I always, when I get there, is this trepidation. Am I saying it right? But she doesn't flinch. I did it right? It's kind of okay. All right. Today is another great day. This is our, I think Dana said, this is our, was it our second, our second section or series. All right. So I think this is, but I think this is our 8th show. Maybe it's our 8th show.
That's correct.
I think so. But we've been doing some amazing things. And in case you haven't heard this spiel before, thank you for you guys that are so faithful to have subscribed. We'd love you to share it and tell people about the show. The content is great. It's authentic. We're just grassroots people here. Just aware of some stuff and helping others. And if they would allow us to just sort of ignite that experience of becoming aware of your unawareness around diversity, equity, inclusion, and all of the above. There's so many intersections that involve this: anti-oppressive work, anti-bias work. And so we want to include you. We really want this to be reciprocal, and we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your comments. Thank you so much for being faithful, those of you that have subscribed and others that are going to just drop. This show is just going to drop in your lap, and we're hoping that we can cut it up in a little bit sometime so that you can watch 10-minute segments and stuff. Shout out to Local Street. Shout out to Jelly Social. We have a panel I'm coming back within a week, and I really look forward to your input and what you have to say about the show. Lorrie is here with me again. Like I said, this is our 8th show, and she's going to let you know a little bit more about herself. You can get it on her website. You can find out about her on her website. She's going to give you. We will put that information in these shows so that you can find her. So, Lorrie, let them know about Lorrie and what Lorrie does.
So I worked for many years at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health as a health and community education specialist. I've been a community mental health consultant, and that's been repeated a number of times on the podcast. So if people are interested, they could go back. Right now, I'm the president of my own company called getbraver.com. That's where you can find me. And I've worked in all aspects. My entire career is in various capacities. It has been in diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, anti-oppression type work. And right now, the 3 main areas that I'm particularly interested in, before I go there, the 3 main areas are threshold conversations, executive coaching, and content creation. And content creation is could be a 2-hour course, it could be a week course, depending on what you're looking for. In terms of the threshold conversations, whether it's with a group of executive coaches or with an individual, I very much, if the leadership in an organization or in a group is buying into transformation or change to dismantle, for example, racist or oppressive systems, then you've got a good chance. It's very hard work for things to happen, and that starts with facilitating conversations. When we have, which we're going to get into a little bit deeper today when we were preparing yesterday, you come to a point where people are coming from different perspectives. And Andalua, she talked about 1 + 1 can equal 2, but 1 + 1 can also equal 3. Because I come with my point of view, you come with your point of view. We might have 2 profound truths that might seem so different from each other that one has to be right and one has to be wrong. But in fact, they might be two profound truths that can come together in unity and difference. And so you get a third reality. So that's just for three. Imagine like a whole room of people having these kinds of threshold conversations and then acting upon them. And organizations, for example, just one small might have pain points. Might have admitted to themselves, we have ableism in the organization, we have racism going on, some unconscious, some conscious. We want to make a difference. So we start with those conversations. And then training is just one piece, but education is a piece that I really have always loved. And a large part of my career is around that. So that's what I've been involved in. And in that learning process, whether it's a threshold conversation or whether it's a course or whether it's just coming into an organization and changing the relations, there's an unlearning process that comes, because there's a lot of stuff that we do where we might be dominating, for example, in systems that aren't necessarily, which we're going to talk about more when you start asking me questions. So there's an unlearning where we want to either eliminate or mitigate ways of being together that are harmful or that aren't useful anymore. May have worked at one time, but doesn't work now. There's also like a growing, emergent coming to collaboration. It's one thing to talk about collaborative work. We're all sitting at the table, but if we're all either secretly or openly competing with each other, then collaboration, that's a different kind of collaboration than a profound collaboration where we're trying to flatten our systems, where we work together in a way where we really want to affect change that's good for all of us. And we all have places individually and collectively of privilege and oppression. And it's unpacking all of that through conversations, through training, and then implementing it through action.
We've gone there quite a bit. Awareness in action, a lot. And I admire that a lot. And I say to people, one reason I like this white girl right here is because I know I might not, right? If you call me the other thing, it might not work that way as well, right?
Right.
It's because there's unity and in our difference. How did you say that? I love that, because really, as adults, we learn that, don't we?
Right.
Well, with kids, with friends, with family, you can throw your family away if you like, or there's things people sometimes have to emancipate themselves. But for the most part, you learn to get along, and unity and difference can kind of have a place there, in family, in friendships, right? There's quite a bit of difference since I started doing this work, and I think that is so wonderful. And I think it promotes growth.
Yeah, myself included, there's a real propensity, and unity is a beautiful word in many ways. On the other hand, sometimes unity is guised. It's actually dominance. It's saying, well, let's all unify and do it this way, right?
Absolutely. Or even let's not talk about it.
Fine. Yeah.
Kumbaya.
And maybe sometimes there's danger, or there's all different reasons why we do that. There has to be grace too in terms of the learning process.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Even though some people get tired.
There doesn't have to be grace. I prefer it.
I know, for
I always thought of swans as very beautiful, like you see them going across the lake. And I remember the first time that I saw a swan on Lake Ontario, and her legs, I think it was her, was just, her legs were just, but on the top, she was just floating. And I had no idea how hard she had to work for that grace.
That is so true. And I had noticed that a long time ago. I thought, oh my gosh, there's a lot going on under there. Isn't it? That's a beautiful example. That is a really beautiful example. So we're learning a lot, you and I together.
Yeah.
We're creating a level of reciprocity, and I am enjoying the journey in this series. I've got my pen here. Look at this. But today we're going to get into some stuff, and we would love you to participate. Maybe if you want to be on the show, please get in touch with me. We can vet it on a call, virtual tea with a crumpet, whatever. and sit and just chat and see if you're a fit. That would be great. We want to bring on everyday people. It is the voices of humanity, and it does have to fit the show, but I hope you can join us in doing this. Lorrie, I'm going to get down to the meat and potatoes. This is the ackee and saltfish. This is a body of Lorrie's work. So I was saying to her the other day, get that book out there, get it published. Though I don't advocate, I always say to people, and she knows this, that if you can find a good Black author, that it might not give us capital. I mean, you know what I'm saying, but it may help. Of course, it's going to help. I am very conscientious about where I eat and how much I eat where, because I would love to put my money into my community. There's other communities that do this beautifully. So I encourage my brothers and sisters, Black and white and indifferent, to really, please, this train of thought may not be yours, but it is actually very logical. And if you want to hear more about that from me, please be in touch. I would really love to chat with you. Okay, Lorrie, let's see if we can get into this. It's already 5:11, and you know how we do. So I'm going to read a piece from the work. This is our series, Getting Uncomfortable. And I don't know if you want to change that name. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, no problem.
Getting uncomfortable, right? I've learned a lot even about self-management, self-awareness in doing this series with Lorrie. It's been fabulous. It's been a great journey, Lorrie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Likewise.
So we are at points. They're not numbered, but we've had a great time. Last week's point again was, once white people become more critically conscious, it does not make life easier. This is tense, complicated, stressful, and messy work. Get used to being uncomfortable. This is a sign that I am taking this work seriously. So I do cultural sensitivity and awareness trainings, learnings that have to do with how people from the transatlantic slave trade, sub-Saharan trade, coming into the 21st century, colonization, imperialism, etc., how those people show up. And why they show up, how they show up, and what that looks like in relationship to all other groups. It's fantastic training, learning, has to do with anti-bias work, anti-oppressive work, and it is amazing. It has touched my life first, so that gave me the gumption and the fortitude, and really to share it. So this work here, I find it very complementary to what I do. So this is why Lorrie and I had this connectivity, and here we are. So that's what we covered last week. Lorrie, did you want to share the umbrella just for anybody that might, when we put it out there, that people might be?
Sure. So basically the umbrella is 3 objectives that we had decided upon together. So in terms of doing this work and the body of knowledge that Sandra is sharing and that I'm learning is around developing a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity. Sandra is especially brilliant in this area. Developing critical consciousness and cultural humility. So today I think is about getting in deeper. And regarding that, I'm just going to read you, we'll get to the third one in a moment.
Oh, please do. Go ahead.
I'm going to read you a quote. The book is by Freire, Education for Critical Consciousness. And the author is saying this about this, education for critical consciousness. So I'm educating myself. So I insert myself as a learner every time, including today. Is the main statement of Freire's, education for critical consciousness is the main statement of Freire's revolutionary method of education. It takes the life situation of the learner as the starting point, and the raising of consciousness and the overcoming of obstacles as its goal. For Freire, men's and women's, I add, striving for her and his own humanity requires the changing of structures which dehumanize both the oppressor and the oppressed. And I think that's why part of the reason that you and I get along, because we recognize that, for example, patriarchy doesn't hurt just women, it hurts men too. Right. So, and so we're unpacking all of that together. So the second piece was we're developing that critical consciousness where the center, the learner, is the leader. Right.
Interesting.
And cultural humility is we come together in a way in which, my culture is not the dominant culture. Eurocentricity, right? The European way, and our whole system is set up in a way, North America, where what takes precedence is the European way. The phrase like "when in Rome, like the Romans," but it's really "when in Europe, like the Europeans." Everywhere, like I'm exaggerating, but for the world. And the third one, after as we're doing that, and this is all at the same time and not necessarily in the same order, we're promoting and social justice and equity, because there's so much inequity, inequality, and injustice. And that's what this is all about. And the way that we're going to get there is to dig into our memorized both sensibilities and wounds.
Yeah, I might be a little, I don't know, my people might find me rude right now. I think if I put white in front of patriarchy, would you be offended?
No, not at all. In fact, Bell Hooks did it at the time while she was alive. She would talk about imperialistic, white supremacy, male supremacy. Like she named them all, and she would constantly name. There's about 5 of them that she would constantly name that were the main dominants. So absolutely.
Yeah, I had talked to you. We were chatting a little bit about this. When was it, yesterday? Because we meet and we unpack some stuff weekly. But I was saying that our alignment with our men, there was no threat involved in that. There was a lot of this that came out after slavery, some huge things. But that's a whole other show and a direction. But so I am more concerned about, as I'm doing this, there's a different part of it where I'm very interested. Fundamentally, historically, the healing of my people. If our men, I much respect to our men, and we honor them in our trainings because we know where things are coming from and how we are supposed to be, which we're not now. But there's a lot of us that know that, and some of our elders are really pushing for that as well, where we have our strong Black women, our strong Black men, and Amos Wilson is an amazing guy to look at, Lorrie. Amos Wilson, he is so big on the family, a psychologist, beautiful brother. He's passed, but he is really all about us and how we love each other as a team and a couple. But anyway, that's a sidebar. But his name's Amos Wilson. Got to check Amos Wilson.
It's right in the middle. It's not even a sidebar. It's right in the middle, not even a sidebar.
Oh, yeah. Let's continue with Lorrie. All right, there we go again. I'm going to bring myself back. All right. We want to give you, we had the umbrella, and we might read those points again. Lorrie, do you mind just reading that umbrella again?
Sure. I do go on, don't I?
No, you don't. I do. Go ahead.
Develop a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity. Develop critical consciousness and cultural humility. And I purposely choose humility over competence. There is a place for cultural competence, but I think humility is a deeper place for me, which we don't have to unpack today. We can do that in another show. Promoting social justice and equity.
Very good. I really think we've dialed in or touched all 3 of those on some level anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to read this one here. Do the personal work. So we're talking about being really uncomfortable. I'm thinking of some really uncomfortable moments in my life when I realized I was Black. When a white person, sorry about the bywords, everybody, but this is what we have. And, I went out to sing somewhere, and someone, it was booked over the phone. And some of you have heard this before, of course. And someone, the lady, it was this wonderful place. It was gorgeous. I wanted to sing there. I don't know. You go through things in life and you don't know why you want to sing places or do things or whatever you do. But for some reason, this was like the place to be. And everybody was getting in, and it was a women's group. And I went with my friend, and she's white, and she was singing one month, I was singing the next, and it was a really big deal. But I went to the lady and I said, "Hey, I'm singing here. I'm with my friend singing this week. I'm here to support her." And then she looked at me up and down and she said, "No, I don't think so." And I said, "No, check, I am." We spoke over the phone. And it's interesting because over the phone, if I'm not with my Bajan family, I have a Bajan accent. This is how I talk, right? So she said, "No, I don't think so. I'll get in touch with you. I'll look into that." And she never looked into it. I never sung there. I went back to my table that day. My friend was going to sing, and I just felt so emotional. I thought, what is this that I'm feeling? And you know that card you have in your purse? Lorrie knows about the card. Starts with an R and ends in an E. The race card, yes. You're not supposed to use that. And if you use it, you should be ashamed of yourself. So this woman, my friend came and plopped herself down in front of me, and she said, oh my God, I think they're prejudiced. Because she was watching the whole exchange, and she's thinking, but she did book it, and I helped her to get it. But you did, but she didn't see me. So the optics were a little overwhelming coming in here with my dreadlocks, and that was years ago. And so when we're talking about discomfort in this work via Lorrie's pieces, I think I can say in faith, I know that you're going to experience some real connectivity in this work, and especially with what I do and what she does, put it together, it's going to be dynamic. Here we go again. Do the personal work, critical self-reflection, self-interrogation, and self-check. Inserting myself as a learner, which Lorrie is committed to do. I am certainly learning every single day, but I want to continue doing this because I believe it's making a difference. Inserting myself as a learner and co-facilitator in the classroom, consistently, persistently, and vigorously. Be uncomfortable and recognize how I am implicated in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness. How am I implicated? Lorrie, what would that look like if someone came to us and said, well, how am I implicated? Can you give me a little bit of piece of that? What would we say to that?
Do you mind if I'll go to me, I promise, but do you mind if I go to the example that you just gave?
Sure.
So the woman, if she were to do some of that work, right? Basically, and I don't know if this is why it impacted you, but that's why it impacted me. So she's behaving towards you with indifference, complete indifference, right? And not believing you, microaggression. Like a microaggression is a form of violence, both implied and direct. No, you're not singing here. I just told you I'm singing here. I talked, right? So if I'm doing the deep work, I have to ask myself, when am I indifferent? When am, there's ways to do that, and I'll get into that in a moment. So in essence, she positioned herself as a dominant player, and there's just no way you could be here, and you know why, right? You sense it, you've experienced it before. It's not the first time. So she's positioned herself in competition, hierarchy, and rugged individualism. And you as an individual, there's a whole piece around belonging. The message is, do you really belong? And then you get gaslit and like, is this me? And then there was a relief when the woman actually saw what was going on, because you've been gaslit so many times. Well, no, maybe you're too sensitive or whatever. Yeah. That's the white fragility, right? Mm-hmm. Fragility for the dominant group, whatever it is, man or that kind of thing. So is that the question? How do you do the personal work?
Yeah. It's how. What is that? Hang on, let me see, because we don't want to stray. I love that point there. A learner, yes, co-facilitator. How are we, as a learner and a co-facilitator in the classroom, how do we do that consistently, persistently, and vigorously? Be uncomfortable and recognize how I'm implicated in. How are we implicated? What does that look like if someone was to say, well, how am I implicated in this?
So since you mentioned the classroom, in the classroom or whether it's online, and sometimes the vigilance, some people find a little bit irritating because we're expected to assume this is what teachers do or this is what educators do. So every single classroom experience that I have, rather than calling a ground rule, like to me, that sounds very military. It sounds very hierarchical. If the group doesn't agree, if they want the word ground rules, that's cool. My preference is welcoming agreements. That's something very small, and we decide on it together. So, for example, holding multiple points of view in the same space. So something as simple as, sometimes you can use the word but and rather than but. Like, you're a really nice guy, but. So we erase everything behind, right? So it's everything from language. It's an oversimplistic example. How do we insert the and in the classroom? How do we create these welcoming agreements? And how do we actually live them in the classroom? Now, a lot of the people that I've worked with have an understanding of co-facilitating that kind of process. But then what happens when something happens in the classroom? And if I'm actually inserting myself as a learner, and what if I, as a so-called, I'm not an expert, but as a so-called expert, even though I'm saying I'm not an expert, I'm on the learning journey. Yeah, but you've been doing this for 40 years and I'm still not an expert, right? That's not how you set it up in my view, right?
Mm.
I might make a mistake in the classroom that has impacts negatively. There'll be people in the classroom that will defend me because they like my work or they like me, and there'll be people, because things can get polarized, who are just on me, like or are too scared to tell me because they're used to professors that you have to agree with them, or you're not going to get the mark. So you gently unpack that and invite people to challenge each other with this set of guidelines. So we have conversations and learning that's adult education, that we're actually learning from each other, where we're trusting not only my knowledge, but the knowledge of the classroom. So that's why, go ahead.
I know, I'm just chomping at the bit. But I'm going to read this again. Be uncomfortable and recognize how I'm implicated in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness. It is really, my sister girl White, we kind of had it out in a nice way the other day with that beautiful feeling of where it is what you said. I loved that. Unity, but yes, unity and difference. And not always, because we've known each other over 25 years. So it's like, I've noticed this part of you that I really don't care for. I love you. But this part, I recognize from my research, I recognize from my elders, this here says to me that you are, and that's who, I can't change that, and she can't change that without looking at the subconscious, the unconscious, looking at all those pieces, right? Be uncomfortable and recognize how I am implicated in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness. How do people, I'm not noticing that people just wake up and have that experience. And I'm sure you can agree. My friend now, who I've known for so long, and it was like, if you're close to someone white, and you have, white is in my family, my grandfather's white, so Scottish. So now in my relationship with this woman, I love her dearly, her children, her family, but something was bothering me. Mm-hmm. There was a way in which we had to talk that through, recognizing that she's doing this work with me as she can do it with her family and so on. And there's something, and my impatience, I suppose, because she says everything right, does everything that should be done. And I've known her and I love her dearly for years, but there was a couple of things where I thought, you know what? How you're implicated in areas. There were some areas I wanted her to look at. Can you do this? Because we're connected. You can't make people do things, but I'm tight with it, right? So it's like this A, B, and C. This right here, and I called her a Becky. I love you, honey. I love you.
It's a Becky. I don't know what a Becky is. Sorry.
Becky. She called the people who were barbecuing, Black people. Oh my goodness, barbecuing while Black, and she called the police on them. It was in the States. It was.
Oh. Yeah, backyard, front yard, all that stuff.
Right. And so it's just. So my friend and I got into it. How could you call me a Becky? And we went on, But there's areas now for me in terms of people understanding how they may be implicated. It's certainly not a judgment. It's a point of awareness that if your eyes are open, you could be white and you could still see that, whoa, because you told me some stories too, where, you could see that, oh my goodness, this is coming through the time warp, right? This is coming from generations. It's in you. It's bred through our people. Yes. and I was really looking at her for the first time, but she loves me and I love her, but I could still, I'm going to say this, I'm simplifying it terribly. I could still see this whiteness. Mm-hmm. And of course I'm going to see it. I mean, she was bred by, and I was bred.
Yeah, we're trained from our little feet to dominate.
Yes. Yes.
White people, right?
How do you think people can handle that? Like how you're sitting around, I'm loving you, you're loving me, we're connected. I change or something is changing around you. People are talking a lot about DEI and anti-Black racism, etc. Implicit racial bias. How can people really receive or look at this or start to look at it? That they may be implicated in systemic racism inadvertently.
Well, I think there's things we think we know we don't know, or we know we don't know. And again, as we've said many times, the last two pieces, there's things we don't know we don't know.
It's true. You don't know what you don't know until you know you don't know.
Right. And especially if you're invested in being a good person. I mean, even the charity model is kind of a top-down thing, which I won't unpack right now because we could have a whole show just on charity. As much as I think charity can be helpful, it's also, anyway, it can be harmful. So we're limited. So your question is, I want to make sure I'm answering the question. Your question is, how do you get at that discomfort? So I think
that implication you're talking about your work. I love those together.
The implication and the discomfort. That's what you're asking. Okay. So are you talking about when somebody actually faces me or faces somebody else and you're asking for tools?
Well, say I'm white and I'm trying to, wow, this question's big for me. Like, how am I implicated in racism? How do I participate in it? How am I implicated in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness?
Right. The first thing I would do is start doing some of your own work. Read Peggy McIntosh's Invisible Knapsack. Right. That'd be the first place to start. And she's her newest one, which was, I think, 2012. It has about 52 pieces that a white person doesn't have to worry about. Just very simple things like, I've said this before. Sorry?
I was going to say, we got to bring some of that up on the show.
Sure. I've sent it to you, I think.
You did have it.
So, sorry, I pointed. I'll point back at myself. So things like, that was an example, self-checking. Things like I don't have to worry about being pulled over because I'm white. I don't have to worry about somebody coming into a store and following me. I'm probably going to see myself represented on TV in some way, right? And so there's many more examples like that. And that's the simpler stuff. And I have seen in the classroom where that gets resisted. And that's okay. We're all at different places. I think the bottom line is this work is fraught with pain and joy. And to know that those, I call them thorny moments, but they're sometimes much more than thorny. They're very painful moments. And so some of my tools are, I listen more than I talk. I know that's not what I'm doing on this show, but when I'm actually, in the process, there's a silence that we can use not only in terms of giving space and not taking up too much space, but even where the silence is used in a way that I hear you, I'm listening to you, and you're the one that tells me whether I'm in conversation with you, and I'm not only talking from my point of view, I'm taking into consideration your point of view. So I can give you an example of. It was a hard learning in my 30s. The executive director of an organization that I worked with, oh God, I loved her, I still do. And she said, Lorrie, I have to tell you something. I said, please tell me. She said, you influence a lot of people. I was doing a lot of building businesses, like really hard work. And I'd be out there working with various stakeholders. And I was a little mouthy back then, still am. And she said, you're influencing a lot of people, but do people know that they influence you? I said, I think so. So she said, well, I said, because as soon as somebody tells me something, like I'm on it. She said, but do you tell them? I said, oh my God, no, I don't. And from then on, I started telling people how they influence me, not as a tool to, build, Dale Carnegie relationships. No disrespect to Dale, but it's not just about that, right? It's about really going in deep, and that we're always in this together. It's like a back and forth. It's a dance. And so the silence is a part of that. And there's like a reflection that goes on. But in that reflection, I can reflect all I want. But if I don't have a body of knowledge, at least a nodding knowledge about what anti-racism means, what's the definition of grace in the context of anti-racist work. It's different than a religious form of grace, for example. Both graces are a great way to be in the world, They're two different things. Again, unity and difference. Is it true? Whose truth is it? Who is benefiting from the work that I'm doing? So but and I could go on with some of the other questions that I ask myself. It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and knowing that there is no destination. It's an ongoing, lifelong process. Once I get to this destination, there's another destination deeper that you go in, right? And you keep learning, like even how people self-identify. I remember when I used to work with people that self-identified as psychiatric survivors, every time we had a meeting, we had to make sure, what are all the self-identifications? Like, so, I don't ask like that, but do people call themselves Black? Do people call themselves African Canadian? Do people call themselves consumers? Like this, because we were working with different intersections of identity. So there's no assuming. Don't keep assuming. Even being an ally, somebody identifies you as me as an ally, really exciting, but it's not static. It might be over next time. Not because I made a mistake, but because it's an ongoing process. Or I might have made a mistake and we want you, we still want you, we don't want you, right? Like recognizing that there's an ambivalence when somebody comes in and we're working with communities, talking about white people now, that aren't our own. People are trusting us, but there's this ambivalence. People have actually told me, and I've said this before in the podcast, where the ambivalence is, I'd rather do it on my own or our own, but we don't have the resources. And I happen in this one job, actually a couple of jobs, to have the resources and quite a bit of power, right? So you have to be really sensitive to not being a savior, to recognizing that we're coming into something that has been broken by people like me. That's my complicity.
That's an aha moment. Yeah. Really.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, it's deep. It really is to me. I'm going to read this again. Be uncomfortable and recognize how I am implicated in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness. It really is not that simple.
No.
Because, I've known this woman for 20 something years, and I'm going out with another white gal on Sunday for dinner. We've known each other longer. And I think when I see whiteness, and I say it because I can't even describe this any other way, for the first time in my life, because I was assimilated, 21st century, 20, 19, 18, 17, say we're in the cusp of slavery. Something was passed to me, passing it on, keep passing it on. So when I think of how I think, or I've been assimilated to be, when I wanted to be white, because of that, again, Francis Cresswell saying, white is right, brown stick around, black get back. The classification of so-called races, we're on the bottom of the wrong, darker the skin, the more dehumanized. And so though we know logically that's not true, we've lived it out, it's been passed to us over and over again. So we are, how we may be implicated doesn't have to hold offense. But when I step back, now that I'm woke, and I go, wow, this is a white dominant system. And I've got friends around me that, that are white, that I love, but still can't see themselves. And I can't force that, of course. I'm just there to tell you how it's coming through me and what it looks like. Because I was assimilated to be like you. So I have it. I also have the eyes that can see certain things, right? So when I think of how people are implicated, be uncomfortable and recognize how I am implicated, audience, in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness. It's not something we get to just sit down and go, I don't know, what's she talking about? What the heck? It's something that has happened beyond you, before you were a thought.
Yes.
So that's sort of, what do you think? That's like the logical part to me. And I think people put the offense first before that logical component.
Yeah. And I think people think it's when you say whiteness, oh, just because I'm white. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking. Sorry?
I said, or blackness, if it's a byword that bothers you.
I mean, it's become an identity because of colonialism, right? Because of various forms of dominance, right? If that were to ever switch where it really were, you didn't have these hierarchies of competition, hierarchy, and rugged individualism, we wouldn't even need to have this conversation.
Very true. Very true. Very true. And Lorrie, the fascinating thing about this, how people are implicated, when you look into, the upper echelons of management, say, because that's where I had to deal with some things and support people in the areas of social justice. And it's very hard because people, again, the gaslighting is sort of this, psychoanalytical shift where people are like, what's coming up for you? Why are you so anxious? It's constant. And I used to be so intimidated by that. This is why knowledge, really, truth can really set us free. And it's amazing how that is true. And just knowing that all happens behind closed doors. Other people don't see it. Even my white friends don't see it. As much as they love me, they don't see when my people are suffering and when people are psychologically, and they're being internally oppressed, and they leave thinking something's wrong with them. Nothing's wrong with you. Something happened to you.
Yeah.
And it continues to happen.
Yeah. And it's dangerous to speak up. Once we liberate ourselves, I find I've still got a long way to go in my places of, let's call them oppression. I'm not talking about whiteness, obviously. I won't have a good comeback if I haven't healed some of those pieces of me where I buy into some of the patriarchal ways used to, right? That's a whole other topic. Or, various traumas that I've experienced where I'm actually believing that I'm less than, right? And then while I'm still at some deeper level believing that, and that takes hard work to come out of that, right? So that's the kind of trauma I think, I'm in no way comparing, but that you're talking about, because racism is connected to trauma, right? So when you're that internalized trauma that you've talked about, or sometimes internalized racism, I've seen it in the coaching that I do, right? And sometimes I'm not the right person to be doing that work. There are people who do this work a lot better than I do. What I was going to say was to sort of, you once told me that there was a woman that was speaking. She wouldn't even speak up because she was still in that place of fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I actually had to put up my hand and stop.
Yeah.
This person who was physically big, but this dominant, patriarchal system or what? It was incredible to me. And I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. Yeah. The door's closed. It's always closed. We're in this room with just so many of the dominant group. And here you are, this psychoanalytical thing that's happening to this precious person. Well,
and it's therapizing you. It's inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge. But I'm saying that, audience, to say it's there. It's real.
Absolutely.
It's not fabricated.
I've seen it too.
And our people come out of the closet. It's real. So it's not something that you're making up. So this is why I appreciate this work. Be uncomfortable and recognize how I'm implicated in systemic racism and the structure of whiteness. And I find the defending oneself, and I understand why people do it, because if you're not getting, we need the information. We need, like you're saying, the education is really important, because patience, which I can understand, brethren, that sometimes you don't got the patience with it. But genuinely, I know friends that I have that are white, genuinely, okay, what are you saying? Just explain it to me. And they're not going to do that with anybody else but me, because there's a level of trust there. Right. So we do. There is that level of trust that if you have somebody close to you, who better to start with? Lorrie?
There's that too, but sometimes it's kind of getting out of your comfort zone, right? That's one of the many tools we used in the classroom. Sure. And I think sometimes the aha moment for people that are in the classroom, because it's really easy for me to say, yeah, challenge me, I'm a learner, right? But the moment something really hard comes up, right? And then and they see my discomfort, and I'm saying, oh my God, you're right. Thank you. Tell me more. And give it to the classroom. And somebody starts defending me because I'm such a nice person. Thank you. And there's something that's going on here. I want to learn here. And at the end of the day, like I will I'll take the thorniest moment, the biggest mistake I might have made, right? And I'll say at the end of the day, this is what I've learned, and this is what I'm going to do differently. And if people have feedback to give me, if I'm off track, I'm open to that too, even at the end of the day. So it's in those moments where if you're seeing that you're in a dominant position, then you're really walking the talk. And I can't say I always do. It's impossible. I'm implicated, right? But I do my best to keep walking the talk. And it's those moments that start like the paddling of the swan, right? We start moving together collectively a little more gracefully.
It's an amazing thing to watch when we do these training learnings, where people are ready. They're very professional looking. Everybody's ready until we start getting into it. It's like a mural. You step back and then it's like, oh, ouch, that's too much. You're stepping on my toes. Or Massa's toes, my great grandfather Massa. So all of a sudden, and you're not aware of it. You're not even really aware that it's happening, but you're uncomfortable. Then you might make a comment that, because you're skirting around the fact that this did happen to you. And that's the first part we try to deal with. We do a lot of going back and forth into this time warp that people get, wait a minute, I brought bags home with me. And who put these things in this bag? Because this logically doesn't make sense to me. Why do I have this luggage? But you do have it. And it shows up. You don't have to think about certain things that you do in this construct that we're living in.
Yeah, and we carry it on our backs like a bag of grievances. Well, I'm trying really hard, right? But you want to give me one more, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be like that. Take off the bag, sit down, and bite by bite.
Absolutely. Don't worry about building the church and the school. We need that too. But I love this. I really do. And I think if people are out there going, well, okay, so sum this part up for me. I'm implicated. Okay, fine. I didn't know I had this. What can I do? Like, what's something that I could do?
Well, I recognize that I have limits to my knowledge in this area.
Beautiful.
What's that? And
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, and that I have biases based on incomplete or biased knowledge. Information, right? And this is all about addressing very complex issues around systemic oppression, and there's an unpacking process. But unless, in that first piece that we read, like I have some, again, at least nodding knowledge. I'm going like this because my hand hurts, but I'm trying not to be
boo-boo. She fall down.
At least nodding knowledge of history and how that becomes, as Baldwin says, a force within us, and that we enact that force, which you've said a few times today, and then embracing that discomfort and uncertainty, and being comfortable with ambivalence and ambiguity, and working with that. There's no answers. There's no ticky boxes. I've worked with so many organizations. Just give us some ticky boxes. That's not like, to me, soul is all those places in ourselves collectively and individually that are vulnerable, that are our dreams, that if you believe in any form of spirituality, is our spirituality. It's that tender, loving place filled with grace, but also shadow. So that's basically, we're going in a little deeper. I'm not suggesting we do therapy, in a training, right? But this kind of work requires emotion. So being comfortable with emotion and acknowledging it, having like when there are really difficult moments in the classroom, sometimes you take a break. Sometimes, people need to just go for a walk. Sometimes you ask the person privately, what could I have done differently? Do I have permission to unpack this? And there's technology like that we use with the welcoming agreements, for example, or working with, turning triggers into learning edges and so on. There's all kinds of ways of doing that that's already implemented. But sometimes the moments are so difficult. You can see it on the person's face. You can feel it. They're contracted. That's not a moment to use some little, little tool that I mentioned at the beginning. Like, it's a big tool. I don't want to put it down, but sometimes they're so deep that you need to think fast on your feet and do the best you can, but also ask others to do it. Like, trust the classroom, trust the groups. There are times where I don't know what to say because I don't know. And I'll say, what do others think? And just the wisdom that comes out of the group is incredible. If I'm really saying that I'm a learner too, then I have to co-facilitate in that way with the group.
You know, I also want to say to my people, my brown and black skinned people, that honestly, there is a certain resentment for a moment that you do feel when you wake up, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because, and I love talking to my African brothers and sisters. Love it, love it, love it. You know, some of us were taken, some of us stayed home, and we lost our names. They've got their names and their heritage, and I'm so fascinated by it now. Love me some black peoples, because it's who I am.
Yeah.
And before, I was hanging with a lot of people that are implicated in systemic racism, including family extended and such.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, so don't be feeling guilty about that, my people, okay? Don't be feeling guilty about that. As long we're striving to move in love and care for all people. We've got white people, my sister, my cousin-in-law. We got all kinds of people in our family. Married, white. We got beautiful babies. We got some dark skin, yummy baby. We got all different kind of people. Asian people, we're all blended in here. However, like Neely Fuller says, I love this man, Dr. Neely Fuller. If you don't know who you are, I'm putting that part in because you might not like to hear how he really said it, but if you really don't know who you are and you're marrying someone for whatever reason besides that you love them, or you know, because even that, we lost that connectivity. There was purpose in those type of relationships. However, historical purpose. But if you don't know who you are, it's almost like you're aligning yourself with your captors. You need to know who you are. And that is, I'm saying need, because it actually is very healing to know what's on the table. In other words, know who you are. Who the heck am I?
Yeah.
21st century, 20, 19, 18, 17. What does that look like for our Indigenous brothers and sisters? Blacks, especially. What does that really look like before we take up that whole little folk song thing? Black, white is right, brown stick around, black get back. That's a whole little song, right? Because it was not good. The darker the skin, the more dehumanized. Who wants to do that? I was talking to an Indian brother in an Uber the other day, and he was saying, yeah, still it's so hard. Some of us are really taught. We want to go as far away from dark.
No, I get it. And that's, that was the third point that I was going to make, which is, you've just spoken to it, is challenging or making visible power dynamics. And so one of the ways to do that is to do a power analysis, right? Okay. And there are ways to do that in the classroom. There are ways to do that on a systemic level. Even like you've said many times, just today as an exercise, I wrote to myself, like some of them I've read and some of them I haven't, like Howard French, Lorraine Hansberry, Octavia Butler, Ralph Ellison, Toni Morrison, Ira Baraka, Zora Neale Hurston, Muhammad Ali, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois. Did I say no?
Du Bois. He denounced the Du Bois.
Robinson, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and Marcus Garvey, James Baldwin. All these people are Black authors and as you say, scholastic giants.
Absolutely.
Audre Lorde, Franz Fanon, Langston Hughes. Like there's so many, right? And we have to learn from each other. If all I've been reading is dominant, body authors, they might be really intelligent. That's great, and there are many different truths and perspectives, even about history.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And in people feeling like it's hard to feel good when you're saying to somebody, you're implicated in, systemic racism and the structure of it. But if we get the knowledge behind it, the offense actually, it lessens, for lack of a better word. The offense, because I've seen it happen to people in my life. The offense kind of, okay, that makes sense. The awareness in action now, I find mostly happens to a mother that's got brown babies at home. She married a Black man. More of an invested interest. That's how it works, because those are your children, and somebody's going to crush your corn dough. You're going to feel it. Those are your babies. So those that have an invested interest or grandchildren that are brown skin. I had a lady next to me. She was so overwhelmed at thinking of coming to one of these because she didn't want to hear anything that would say that anybody would hurt her brown grandchildren. And that's hard. Some people are like, oh my gosh. I had another lady that said, she's Black, married a white man, got some nice boys there at home. And she said, now I want my boys to marry Black. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know. So my answer was, I counted to 10 and say, hun, your boys, that man is part of them. That's their daddy.
Yeah.
They have every right to marry somebody that looks like him.
Right.
But at least let them know, especially if they're going to get tased and thrown to the ground with a knee on their neck, prepare your children, prepare your young man.
And know your history.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
And
Both of them.
if this is a worldview that you agree with, like unpack Eurocentricity.
Yeah.
Share power.
Absolutely. Are my white girlfriends implicated? Yes, they is. And they know, because we love each other, give each other hugs and kisses, take each other out to dinner. But it's what it is. Okay. So Lorrie, I hope they don't ban the show. Oh my goodness. This is good for the soul. And people, don't be feeling guilty or upset. Okay. Honestly, if you even want to get in touch with Lorrie, like her work, I mean, really, you got to sell it, girl. Because don't give it away for nothing. Give it a discount. I'm even joking. Anyhow, this has been really good. And we got to one point. It's like, you should see the body of work she's got. Oh my goodness, we'll be here till we're 80. It's incredible. So I identify it because it's a lot of what I do as well. Thank you, guys. We've got a little commercial for you. We'll be right back. Hi there, I'm Sandra McKechnie from Double Consciousness. Double Consciousness looks like this: cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness trainings. I've been doing it for 4 years. We're going into our 5th year, our 41st time on Zoom, and we're doing it. Would love you to join us. The next thing that I do is I'm a certified life coach holding space for clients in the areas of cultural awareness and sensitivity, right? So people that may have a challenge and they just want some space, a consultation, coaching opportunity to unpack implicit racial bias. Everybody's welcome, and we would love to have you in the trainings or book a consultation. And we have a free opportunity, 15 minutes, if you want to have a chat and get to know me and find out where you fit in that. The next thing that I do is I am a host for Voices of Humanity out of prconnectionsradio.com. If you want to be on my podcast and you're a fit, because it does have to fit with the show, has to complement the show and the network, I would love you to get in touch with me. And I'm also, from my heart, and I've always been a singer-songwriter, and I love this stuff. I love the singing. We put it in our trainings, our cultural sensitivity and awareness trainings. So sometimes I just sing just like this. You're all that I want. You are all that I need. And you brought me here when I can't find my way. You're all that I need. And you brought me here to pray. You should hear that with my keyboard player. It's to live for. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that helps you to know who Sandra McKechnie is. Take care. Bye for now. She's so cute. Oh my goodness. I got to lean into the discomfort. I got to get a little facelift. I'm Asian. She looked too cute. Oh my goodness. That's all right. It's all good. Lorrie, this was good. I like the connectivity. You're spoiling me. If anybody else is looking that's been on the show, I had connectivity with you too. It's just that having someone that really does so much of the same thing that I do, yet we're different, it's a pleasure. It really is.
Thank you.
I hope that this show comes to you with the intention that was intended, and that's with love, and I hope it's reciprocal. Please leave us a comment. If you would like to get in touch with us, if it's an issue of knowledge, there's plenty of it. We don't know half of it, but we're in our lane. We know our part, and we're striving to just put it out there so that it can evoke awareness in action. Okay. Thank you so much. Sandra McKechnie coming to you from prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye. Say bye, Lorrie. Take care. All the best. Have a nice weekend.